So welcome back to the Divorce Do's and Don'ts show. I'm your host, Lisa Decker, certified divorce financial analyst, real estate collaboration specialist in divorce, and certified amicable divorce professional. I am also the CEO and founder of Divorce Money Matters and Divorcetown USA, the sponsor of this show. And we are so happy to have you joining us today, whether you're listening live or you're watching the replay. So if you've been following the live show this month, then you know that April is National Financial Literacy Month. And for divorcing parents, one of the biggest concerns they may have is how the divorce will affect their children's college fund. I am truly honored today to have with us Dr. Elizabeth Rosner, who is going to talk with us about going to college debt-free. Yes, it's possible. So Dr. Roz, welcome to the show today. I'm so delighted to have you here. Dr. Roz is a nonviolence strategist. I want to hear more about that too. An entrepreneur, coach, certified DivorceCare Coach, and change maker. And change maker she is. She has earned 3 degrees, including her Ph.D., with only $1,000 in loans. That is amazing. After retiring with 30 years in and around higher education, she founded her college coaching practice, Debt-Free Degree with Dr. Roz. And she is the special projects manager for the Martin Luther King Center in Atlanta, Georgia. We have a special guest today, and I couldn't be more thrilled. So as a form of nonviolence, her focus is teaching students to create wealth by graduating fully debt-free using her proven GRIT, G-I-R-T blueprint, strategies, and accountability system. We can't wait to talk with you today, Dr. Roz. So welcome to the show.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. I have been looking forward to this interview, and I am delighted to be here with all of your audience. And Lisa, you are one of my favorite people. And so thank you so much for having me on the show today. Thanks.
Well, I appreciate that very much. And you are just an amazing woman. And I was so excited when you said yes to be on the show. So let's get right to it. Tell us about your GRIT blueprint. And I'm not able to pull up any slides today, so we're going to just have to hear the visual from you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So in all of my coaching programs and in the talks that I do, I always use the acronym GRIT. And so for Debt-Free Degree, the G is grants and scholarships. There is 30 billion with the B dollars in grants and scholarships out there. The R is return on investment. So what happens is folks will say, oh, I'm just going to take all the student loans and figure out how to pay it off later. No, we need to start from the beginning and think about that return on investment. The I is interconnected. That's the I in all of my programs. And so that's when we're looking at, Lisa, how can we work smarter and not harder? Because so many times we're out kind of churning, but there are lots of different things that we can do to maximize those funding. And then the T is what I call my triangle approach. So if you think of a 3-legged stool, you have SM, that's student money, that's the student contribution. Then you have the other corner is FM, that's your friends, your family, your folks, the people you're familiar with. And then the last one is OPM, and anybody know what that stands for? That is other people's money.
Okay.
Right. And so what a perfect month to be discussing this in Financial Literacy Month.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's exactly why we invited you this month, because we knew you would be the greatest guest to kick this month off. So tell us about Henry's debt-free degree journey.
Yes. So Henry's grandmother is a good friend of mine. And she was frustrated. He was frustrated because, as many of you know, in order to earn a bachelor's degree, it's about 120 credit hours. And Henry had gone to a private institution. He had accrued over 200 credit hours and still had not earned a bachelor's degree. And at that point, he had about $80,000 in debt between he and his family. And so his grandmother asked me if I would work with him. And I said, absolutely. he was so devastated because of, number one, the crippling debt, number two, the lack of earning a degree, and number three, what he thought was the death of this dream to be a foreign language professor in higher ed. And so essentially what I did with Henry is I looked at all of his credits that he had earned so far, and it's called somebody can look at that and call it a transcript articulation, which is kind of a fancy way to say, basically, I looked at all the classes he had. I looked at what majors he was going for. And that was the issue, is he had changed majors several times. So we met with his registrar, and she came up with a plan that he only needed 5 classes in order to graduate with his bachelor's. Now, I couldn't do anything at that point to help him with the debt that he had already accrued. And so, but what I could do is help him achieve his PhD and moving forward debt-free. So we're talking about that triangle, right? And so I said, okay, you need 5 classes. What can we do to help? And he went to a great aunt and he said, would you be willing to fund these 5 classes? And she said, yes.
Nice.
So, so that's how he finished out his bachelor's. Then I helped him secure a job in the university system as a janitor. And his grandmother was none too pleased with me because she let me know really quickly that her grandson was not a janitor, that she had higher aspirations for him. And I said back to her, his goal is to be debt-free and to teach higher ed, to teach foreign language in higher ed. As a janitor, yes, Henry could clean his buildings very, very fast. But as a janitor, that's an hourly position. And so you have to be on the clock in order to get the hours. So if you clean your buildings in 5.5 hours and you need to be there for 8 hours, then you kind of get to say how you spend the rest of that time. So one thing that Henry did is he would record his classes, or he would record his notes, and he would be listening to his notes and listening to the lectures while he was mopping or doing whatever. The other thing is, if you work for any in-state institution in the state of Georgia, and there's 13 other states that does this, then you get free tuition and fees at any other in-state institution, and it doesn't have to be related to your job. So once he got his bachelor's degree, yes, he could get a higher paying job. But what this did for him was get him a foot in the door in the university system, which meant he had health insurance, he had dental insurance, he had life insurance. He was already accruing towards retirement. And retirement in higher ed is not based, obviously, on your first 2 years. It's based on your highest 2 years of salary. So it doesn't matter where you start with the university system. The other thing is, once you are a part of the university system, then at many institutions, they may offer jobs that are only in-house. And so they may not have it available to everybody, but once he was already associated with that university, then positions that became available, he would have access to. So there were a lot of long-term, great return on investment for him to become a janitor on his path for a debt-free master's degree and a debt-free PhD.
Wow. Wow. I mean, who would have ever thought, right? That's pretty amazing strategy there.
Right.
So what do you find is the biggest hurdle to earning a debt-free degree?
I would say the biggest hurdle is mindset. I have this thing that I call just this echo chamber, and so many students, particularly students who are traditionally aged going to college, they are around people all day long that are complaining about student loan debt. They may have teachers and other faculty members that they've been around through K-12 that have said the only way you can get a degree is through student loan debt. They may go to the guidance counselor and say, I'm really interested in this school. And the guidance counselor may say, okay, here's your student loan application. And so there's all of this. And even some of them may already have parents who are still paying off student loan debt, or who struggled and have recently paid off student loan debt. So what happens is, this mindset is seeped in about you have to have student loan debt in order to graduate from college. What I do, and I just posted this in my Patreon community, there was a link to an article. It was a phenomenal article about 8 Black businesswomen and how they were changing financial literacy. But one of the paragraphs was about, it was talking about managing debt and managing assets. And the paragraph started off, whether you're managing your student loan debt or your mortgage, and it's just that message of you have to take student loan debt in order to graduate college. And my whole thing is that's not at all the case. Now, the other thing in terms of mindset is folks will say it's too hard. And I would say back to them, I think it's hard to pay off the average $75,000 in student loan debt.
Mm.
You know, when you buy a house, my first mortgage was a little bit less than $75,000. When you buy an asset for a certain amount of money, then once it accrues, some principal to that, you can sell that asset and either pay it off or whatever. With student loan, that's not a sellable asset.
No.
And so in order to, obviously it's going to benefit you. And I obviously am a huge proponent in college education. But it's looking at that return on investment and figuring out all the different ways that you can accrue that degree without accruing all the debt.
Mm. So do you have any other examples of clients that you've worked with? I love these real life stories.
Yes. So I just recently worked with someone who wants to pursue her PhD. And she she texted and she said, how can I earn my PhD? How can I earn my doctorate without going broke? And so we just had a conversation about this yesterday, because one of the things I recommended, she's already working in higher ed, but she's working for a private institution. So one of the things I encouraged her to do is to go talk to her supervisor and say, are you all willing to pay for me to have extra education? The private school where she is doesn't offer a PhD. And nor are they a part of it. They're just a singular school. So one of the things she's going to do is go say, if I will work for you for X amount of years, are you willing to pay for my PhD? Because it will obviously benefit this institution if she stays there. The other is for her to consider leaving this private institution and going to an in-state institution. That's how I got my PhD. I was working for one school in the university system of Georgia and got tuition and fees at any other school. So the school that offered the PhD, that's how I got that. So, when people say I can't work and go to school, 40 hours a week is 24% of your week. That's it. So even for students who are 18 years old who say, I can't work full time, that time is going to be spent. Those hours are going to go by. That's our great equalizer. I think people used to say that money is the great equalizer, but really time is the great equalizer, because it's the only thing that we can't save, we can't bank, we can't create, we can't make more of, and it's going to go by. So we can't just hold on to it. So if it's only 24% of your week, then what are you doing with the rest of that 76%?
I think a lot of us are looking for extra sleep.
Yeah.
But yes, and especially, those who are younger, have more energy, can keep up with it. But, it is harder for folks as they get older, with less energy and more responsibilities in life. So I love this whole concept. And, so she just learned about this yesterday. Do you have any others who have, I love the janitor story. I think that's fabulous, but any more that you want to share with us? We've got extra time here.
I can tell you, I think later in the show, I'm going to tell you my story, or do you want me to tell you my story now?
You might as well tell us now.
Okay, so my debt-free degree story is, as you said, I have 3 degrees, including my PhD, and I only took $1,000 in loans. So my bachelor's degree, and it's not because somebody wrote tuition checks for me. I qualified for Pell Grant. I qualified for some scholarships, and then I did have family who pitched in and helped. I also worked 20 hours a week at the college where I attended as a student worker. And then I did 2 12-hour shifts on the weekends. So I worked 44 hours a week, and I still got a decent GPA. It's probably not as high as I wish it was, but I had a lot of fun in college, was in a sorority, all of those kinds of things. And so I talk about sleep, Lisa. I didn't sleep a whole lot in undergrad. But it's possible to do those things. The other thing about both the student worker position as well as I did 2 12-hour shifts. At my undergrad major was psychology, and so I was working for an inpatient psychiatric hospital. And in both of those positions, I was also networking. So that's the great thing when you think about how you're gonna, how the I in the grit blueprint is, how are you going to work smarter, not harder? So yes, I could have gone and gotten a job at some random place, but instead I was super intentional to go get a job that was paying me, but I was also in the field I wanted to work in. And
Wow.
so I think that's important too. And so that's how I got my undergrad. And then my master's, my son was not yet sleeping through the night. He was about 4 months old. And I got an email and it said, hey, we have this grant through the Rehab Services Administration. We want to extend it to folks who are currently working in vocational rehabilitation. And we need everything in by next Monday. This was on a Monday.
Wow.
And so thankfully, my GRE score from college was still in date. And so I was able to submit that. I was able to get the transcripts. I was able to get, approval through, my boss and all of that. And so the Rehab Services Administration grant was for every year I was in school, I needed to work 2 years post-graduation in the field of rehabilitation, which is with students with disabilities. So 3 years it took me in school. So that meant 6 years post-graduation, I was agreeing to work with students with disabilities in some form or fashion, which is 9 years.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what happens is, Lisa, is people will go, I don't want to give 9 years. I don't want to give 9 years of my life away. I, Elizabeth, did not want to pay for a master's degree for 9+ years, however long that was going to take.
Mm-hmm.
So I was happy to do that. And yes, it's a sacrifice. And yes, there was a time where I was qualified for a different position that had more money and it had a better office setting. and I was super excited about it. But because the primary duties of that position were not for students with disabilities, then I couldn't apply for it. Otherwise, I would have to pay back everything. And so that was the sacrifice I made because, and then I've already told you all how I got my Ph.D. So that to me is one of the ways where you can map somebody's. And the thing about the mindset is this is something that I was taught from a very young age, is that you don't go into debt for education. And I just thought everybody was taught that as well. And then it wasn't until 2005, I started hearing students talk about these exorbitant, ways that they were accruing debt. And it just shocked me. It truly, truly did shock me. Now I have one family that I'm working with. And what they're doing is, and this is a little bit non-conventional in terms of the way that I do things, but the way that they are so intentional is they are taking some of those Parent Plus loans, they're accepting those, and then putting that money in accounts where it will actually grow. So they've got her entire degree paid off. In other words, they have followed my system for a debt-free degree, but they are also accepting those loans at such a low interest rate to put them somewhere else to grow bigger so that they can then pay them off and give her just a little bit of extra. So that's something that they just shared with me last week that they were doing. And that was new to me because I'm all about a debt-free degree and I get a little antsy when they're like, oh, I'm going to take the loans. And so.
Well, that's fabulous. And I love all the strategy. And yes, you're right. It is a sacrifice. You took 9 years of your life to get the degree and then to work off the agreement in that respect. But you would have been paying that debt all along anyway, as you say. So, it's a wonderful way to look at it in a whole new lens for parents out there. And I will tell you, as a certified divorce financial analyst, it's really sad to see some folks come to me in their 50s and 60s, and sometimes even into their 70s, paying off student loans for their children. And, the Parent Plus loans where they've taken responsibility and they can't retire. because
Right.
they're paying off student loans. So, when you can take these factors that you've put together here and come up with creative solutions, it's a win-win for everyone. And I
Yes.
really just love this. So how can we reduce tuition costs as well?
So that's a great question. I love thinking about all the different ways that we can reduce tuition costs. So if you are at an in-state institution, and let's say, for example, I'm going to use Georgia as an example. I know you have a nationwide, maybe even international audience, Lisa, but I'm going to use the state of Georgia because that's where I am. There's a technical college called called Gwinnett Technical College. And then there's a university in Atlanta called Georgia Tech. I'm sure many people are familiar with Georgia Tech. There are classes that Gwinnett Tech, which is a technical school, offers that Georgia Tech will accept.
Mhm.
So if you pay for English 1101 at Gwinnett Tech, then your tuition is going to be far less than if you pay for English 1101 at Georgia Tech. And there's some math courses and some computer science classes and some other things that Gwinnett Tech offers that Georgia Tech accepts. The other thing is at some schools, they'll offer both an associate's degree and a bachelor's degree. So again, you need English 1101 for each one of those degrees. If you go in and you say, I want to be a bachelor's level student, at some schools, the tuition for English 1101 is going to be higher than the tuition for an associate's level course, but it's the same course. So you need English 1101. If you are looking at all these tuition costs, then that's one way you can do it, is apply to a school for the associate's level program, which oftentimes is a very seamless process to then apply to be in their bachelor's level program. But then you have saved a tremendous amount of money.
Wow. And how about dual enrollment for high school students?
Absolutely.
My children took advantage of that and it was wonderful.
Yes, yes, yes. Dual enrollment, AP credit. There's something called CLEP, which is credit by examination. There's something called FLATS, which is foreign language assessment test. And basically all of these programs can help you earn credits prior to getting to college. And that way, that also is reducing that tuition.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Lots of different ways in terms of looking at that. And some people, want to spend their time in an AP class, and I am all for AP. I think it's an amazing program. What happens is you might have spent a semester or a year in that program. And on that particular day, perhaps you didn't take the test and didn't do particularly well, or you didn't score the level that your institution requires. And so what a lot of people will do is, if there's a corresponding CLEP test, which is credit by examination, they will try to go do that and get credit that way. But you just have to make sure that your school accepts either the AP credit or the CLEP credit.
Interesting. Wow. This has been a fascinating interview. I am so happy that you've shared so many strategies and techniques that parents can use to help their children come out of college with little or no debt. What a blessing to send a child off with into the world. Thank you so much for being a guest today, Dr. Roz. It has been a pleasure. Please tell folks how they can reach you.
Absolutely. Lisa, I just want to say thank you for having me, and thank you for letting me share this with your audience. I'm just delighted to be here. So yes, you can find me, Dr. Elizabeth Rosner, on LinkedIn, and certainly Facebook, Debt Free Degree Facebook, and also my Patreon community, which is patreon.com/Debt Free Degree.
And tell me about the Patreon, because I'm not really familiar with that. How does that work?
So a Patreon community is an organization for creatives. And so what I do is I put videos and articles and different links to things in my Patreon community. It is only $10 a month, and all the members who are in there can ask me as many questions as they want to. Wow. What happens is oftentimes, people will be asking similar questions. And so then I'll actually do a video for the whole community in that. Also, everybody who joins the Patreon community gets a session with me where we actually strategize your particular debt-free degree. And so even if I, and I treat it, Lisa, as sort of like a Netflix membership. So, if a family joins, let's say a family joins, I just had a family join and they have 6 kids. fine. So I'm happy to help. Obviously, all 6 of them are not in college right now. And so, so helping them map out each individual degree, what that looks like, and then they can ask as many questions as they want to in there.
My gosh, what a blessing you are to the world, honestly. And tell us a little bit before we go about your work at the Martin Luther King Center, because I think that is fascinating as well. You are an amazing woman, Dr. Roz.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that so much. So yes, in 2018, I attended my first 2-day orientation to Dr. King's methodology and philosophy of nonviolence. It was there at the King Center. I grew up in Athens, Georgia, and have lived in and around Atlanta and surrounding areas most of my life. And until 2018, I didn't know that the King Center even existed. I had no idea. And so I began doing what I call unlearning and relearning. And there were some things I was taught implicitly, explicitly as a white female in the South that I found didn't always line up with what I believe to be true. And so I was really excited about digging into Dr. King's methodology and philosophy. That was in April of 2018. In August of that year, I got an email from Dr. Bernice King. She's the CEO of the King Center and the youngest daughter of Martin Luther King and Coretta Scott King. And it said, "Dear Elizabeth." And I was thinking, oh, of course she's written to me. Yes, of course. And, I mean, we all get emails from these,
Right.
famous people that, that it's kind of a plug and play thing. But she went on to say, "I'm being asked to teach my father's methodology and philosophy around the world, and I'm assembling a training team. Are you interested?"
Wow.
I said, yes, ma'am. Who says no to Dr. Bernice King? And so I get there, and I don't know if there's going to be, 1,000 people, 100 people. I mean, I have no idea. And in that first training team, there are 10 of us who are certified trainers. And then we have 3 senior certified trainers and then Dr. King. So there's just 14 total of us in the world. And so
Wow.
that began my journey with the King Center. And then in June of 21, I became project manager. And one of the things that I do believe that Debt-Free Degree is a little bit an idea before its time. I believe that it's revolutionary. I believe that so many of us are bought into, you have to have student debt in order to graduate. And I believe that my movement is no. Let's figure out how we can do it debt-free. Nonviolence is also a revolutionary movement. And one of the things that I am most proud of professionally, in addition to Debt-Free Degree, is I was project manager overtaking that curriculum where I attended that 2-day orientation in 2018, and we made it digital and asynchronous and self-paced. So we launched that in January of 22, and I was the project manager for that. And then January of 23, we announced that it's now translated into 6 additional languages, which means
Fabulous.
2/3 of the world now has access to Kingian nonviolence. So that's a little snippet of what I do at the King Center.
Ah, my gosh, that's fabulous. And I've looked at that online, and I'm interested in doing that training at some point because,
Right.
I'm all about different methods of getting divorced, right? And
Yes.
amicable methods. So taking out the acrimony, and it just goes into the same mindset that we can do things in a better way.
Yes.
And so it's beautiful what you're
Beautiful.
doing. And I'm so appreciative of your time here today. So before we go, folks, I want to remind you, and let me share my screen here, about the gifts that you can get at Divorcetown to help you in your divorce. Now, let me start my slideshow here. Bear with me. My assistant has taken on a new path in life, and so I'm learning how to handle these things myself. But let's take it from here. So. If you're headed to Divorcetown, you want to download our free roadmap here, which shows you, it comes with an ebook, and it tells you about the different options, the different ways that you can come into the world of divorce and do it better. We hope to keep you out of the court, which is Duke It Out Drive and Litigation Boulevard. That is not the best resolution method for most people, and we hope that you don't go down that path. At Divorcetown, we also have a lot of resources, and you can find all of the things that you see here in our resources section. We also offer a Divorce Help and Hope support group sponsored by Divorcetown, and that is through meetup.com. And the event dates are always posted in our event section at divorcetownusa.com. At Divorce Money Matters, I have created a free divorce financial fitness kit, which includes an ebook, 50 must-ask attorney questions for when you're ready to hire an attorney, and a very valuable spreadsheet that shows you all the documents that you need to gather as a checklist, a working checklist. This is to help you keep more money in your pocket and more sanity in your life. And next week, I am excited to have our guests Kelly Hazel and Peter Weinbaum, who are both in the financial arena, so that they can talk about how you don't get trapped by divorce and taxes. So thank you again for joining us. It's been wonderful to have you here today. We hope you come back next week. And give me a second here, folks. I do appreciate your patience as I try to navigate this world without an assistant. So let me stop that, and we'll say goodbye now.
Goodbye, everybody.